This is an ROG Li versus the Nintendo Switch OLED. In today's video, I'm going to be comparing the two handheld devices, which kind of look similarly, but are far from being the same thing. In a way, you could say the smaller and the bigger, the lighter and the heavier, the slimmer and the bulkier, but there is actually way more to this comparison than you might think. The very first thing that I think makes those two different handheld consoles is that this is a real console and this is a pretty much like a handheld PC. This is a console experience. You plug it in, connect it to Wi-Fi, it updates whatever it needs to have updated, and then you just put in a cartridge with a game, and that is how you start playing on the Nintendo Switch. On the Asus ROG Li, this is more like getting a PC or a laptop. Turn it on, Windows 11 turns on, you have to update that, you have to update Asus Crate, everything else like the processors and everything inside have to be updated manually, and then from there you will have to set up a lot of more things to play compared to the Nintendo Switch. Where on the Nintendo Switch you just put in a cartridge and start playing in the way it was made for this console. Here you'll play around with the settings like on the normal PC to find the optimal settings for that kind of a device. But the thing is, the Asus ROG Li just has so much more power compared to something like Nintendo Switch. And to be totally honest, it's kind of mind-boggling how a device that is pretty much similarly sized to a Nintendo Switch can be so strong. And I'm gonna come back to that in a second. You know, the Asus is stronger and can play modern AAA games, also the indie games and all the other games that you will find. Well, the Nintendo Switch doesn't have the same hardware capabilities, but the battery is much better because of that. You can really play for much longer on this device. Another thing is more customization versus simplicity. Where this is really easy to play and set up, this can be a little bit more complicated, but at the same time can be more customized compared to a Nintendo Switch. And because of the different hardware that these two devices have, the Asus ROG Li can play pretty much all the games you'll find on a PC, which means you can play AAA games like Call of Duty, Forza Horizon, or whatever else you would be playing on a PC. And also thanks to this, you can play exclusive games that would normally be only for PlayStation or Xbox, because you both have the Xbox support here and the Xbox games that are on PC, but also the PlayStation games that are available for PC like God of War or Spider-Man and Spider-Man Miles Morales. Where on the Nintendo Switch, you're gonna be based more on the games that were made for Nintendo Switch. So like the Zelda Breath of the Wild or Zelda Tears of the Kingdom or Mario Odyssey. And those games are great, but they're only on this system and nowhere else. But if you want to play something that is outside of that system, something that is more made for everyone, for all the other systems, in that case, Asus ROG Li is gonna have much better performance than the Nintendo Switch, because the ports for the Nintendo Switch are often downgraded to make it work on it. And what is really cool about both of those devices is they can both be made into a hybrid console. Both of them can be docked and put on a bigger TV, and both of them can be taken out and used like this, which is a handheld device. In a way, this is a comparison of a PC and a console. But there's a little bit more to it because they can play more bigger budget games and also the indie games, and this is more limited because of its hardware. But there's one thing that I love about the Nintendo Switch that the Asus doesn't have. Because it's a PC, the games you're gonna be buying are gonna be digital, which means you don't really have any ways to, sell it back or get a used copy. Because this can be used with a cartridge with a game on it, well, you can buy games that are used or sell those games if you don't want to play them anymore, which is really cool for those that want to have the physical aspect, because I know people like digital and you can do it on the Nintendo Switch too, but if you want to have physical or you just don't want to connect the Nintendo Switch to online, you can always just buy the physical copies of the games. And Asus is strictly digital. And also the build quality of those devices are both amazing, but there's a couple of things that are different about these things. For example, on the ROG Li you have a full HD screen with a 120Hz display, which means you can play games like shooters with up to 120 frames per second in full HD, compared to Nintendo Switch, which has a 720p display and it goes up to 60 Hz, which means you can get up to 60 frames per second. And while this is true for certain games like the Metroid Dread, for other games like the Zelda Breath of the Wild or the Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, unfortunately you will not see the full 720p and 60 frames per second. A lot of the games are running in, for example, 540p or a little bit more or less, and then upscale to the 720p display. And also the games usually don't run at 60 frames per second like the Zeldas, which run at around 30 but can drop down to 20s. Where on this device you can run pretty much all the indie games and all the smaller games and older games in Full HD 60 frames per second, no problem, and also in 120 frames if you wish so. And for shooters, even modern shooters like Call of Duty, you can push it to Full HD and like 90 frames per second, or you can scale it down to like 720p or 900p, still have a beautiful display, sharpness and everything, but have better stable frame rates. And also this screen has VRR, which means it can smooth out any lags or, cuts in between the frames. So if there's any problem with the frame rate, this has the VRR, which will smooth it out. But there is one thing that I didn't mention, is that this is an LCD screen, where the Nintendo Switch has an OLED display, which means in theory the blacks are gonna be black, everything is gonna look better saturation, better color rendition, everything should look better. But in my personal opinion, the screen that they chose for Asus ROG Ally is very high quality in terms of color and rendition, and it doesn't really make it seem like an LCD screen. I would say it looks closer to OLED than a traditional LCD screen. So whatever screen it is a really high quality screen. But I do love the upgrade of the OLED system compared to the original Nintendo Switch. And I forgot to mention, both of the screens, well, are touchscreens, so we can use it with your touch. Also, both those devices have stereo speakers. On the Asus ROG Ally, you'll see the two under the controllers, the kind of cutouts for the speakers, and on the Nintendo Switch they're on the bottom where my finger is, and there's two of them, so they're both stereo speakers. But I would say the Asus ROG Ally just has superior speakers, because this device has amazing speakers. Like, I really love playing, and the way you hold it pretty much makes it like a stereo setup. It sounds and looks very good playing on this device, and Nintendo Switch, for its size, it's still really good. And in terms of like the physical, one more thing is, well, while this Nintendo Switch is going to be lighter than the Asus ROG Ally, there's one thing that a lot of people are gonna say is because of the way they're built, where the Asus has a little bit more, curves on the back. This one has pretty much flat backside, so there's pretty much no, comfortable setup with this compared to Asus ROG Ally. And because of that, a lot of people, including me, were actually up to get something like this, which is a grip made specifically for the Nintendo Switch. And now you have a little bit better setup, which I personally love having on the Nintendo Switch. And yes, and you can even change the grip sizes and grip, layout if you want to. In this case, this one is the School & Co grip, and I really like it, and makes the Nintendo Switch much better. But because of that, it makes the Nintendo Switch not smaller that much compared to Asus anymore. And while it's still lighter, it's not gonna be even, thinner, because this is gonna, with the grips, gonna be actually more. And also in every direction, it pretty much became almost the same setup. So in that way, I would just say the Asus, hands down, is the better product in terms of ergonomics straight out of the box. But on the Nintendo Switch, you can upgrade it and make it a little bit more bulky, bigger, and slightly heavier, but you don't really feel it, and make it more comfortable to play, which I highly recommend if you want to have a little bit better setup for gaming. One thing I really appreciate about the Nintendo Switch compared to Asus ROG Ally, if those analogs or the buttons fail, well, you can open it up and replace them. But what is easier on the Nintendo Switch is you can actually take the Joy-Cons out, which means, for example, you can take the Joy-Con out and have it as a single controller. You can even use it as a single controller like this, have two controllers, or if you want to swap one out, you can just take it off and on, which is really cool if you want to add a different, color for your Nintendo Switch, or you just want to have them charge, or if you want to, for example, the analog sticks or something is not working properly, you can just switch them. And talking about switching things, you can actually take the Switch controllers, Joy-Cons off, and then put them into the controller holder, and you have like a physical, normal controller, for example, when you want to play on a bigger TV. But because the Asus ROG Ally is a PC, I can actually connect connect my PS5 or Xbox Series X controllers to it through Bluetooth and play, for example, Warzone on a proper gaming controller. But that's not all, because the Asus has 2 additional buttons on the back that could be programmable and remappable to other buttons. So all in all, which one would I say is the better one in 2024? I would say it all depends on your usage. If you like indie games and smaller games, something easy to use, maybe you want to play with your kids, well, Nintendo Switch is gonna be a perfect console. It's lighter, faster to use, and just easier in all aspects, and also is much cheaper. But if you're someone that likes to have power, and as some people would say, real gamers want power.
Real gamers need power. ROG Ally is power.
Well, then the Asus ROG Ally is the one to get, because it is a powerhouse and you can really customize it and play with all the different games that you want. So it all depends on what kind of games you want to play and how you're gonna play, and if you need more power or more convenience, what kind of games you're gonna play. If you're gonna play Mario, then Nintendo Switch is for you, but if you want to play something like Call of Duty, well, it's gonna be the Asus ROG Ally. So it all depends on the use case scenario for you. For me personally, I feel like I'm more of a AAA kind of a guy, so Asus just seems like a nicer thing. It all depends on what kind of games you like to play. And with that being said, that's gonna be it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I hope you guys enjoyed this video once again, and I'll see you next time.